This tutorial is going to talk you through the law of large numbers activity. Notice that I have the sampler set up for a coin flip. So we have a fair coin, tails, heads. I ran the sampler 10 times. Now I want to set up the options. So I'm going to look at the inspector for the sampler and look at result attributes. I want to keep track of the running count of heads. So let's change this A to an H. Make sure it's uppercase. It needs to match exactly what you have on your mixer item here. And I want the running percent of heads as well. So we want to change that to H. TinkerPlots is throwing in some extra ones here in case you want to, let's say, put tails in there. You can do that. I want the repeat index because I want to keep track of that position. You know, what happened on that third coin flip, and that's going to be very important in this activity. So we'll close that up and run this again, and let's really take a look at what's going on in this table. My first flip was a tail. My running percent of heads, my running count is 0, and the percentage is 0. Heads, 1. Okay, now it's 50. Heads, 2 heads out of 3, that's 66. Let's move this over so we have our fractions right next to each other. So students should be seeing that this fraction is what's producing this value here. Okay, so we're looking at the running percent, but we have to make sure students know how we're getting there. Let's pull down the plot now that we've looked at that table. Let's look at the plot. So we want our repeat number to be our horizontal axis. So let's make sure we get this set up correctly. It's TinkerPlots, so we have to spread and stack. Now we want the running percent as our horizontal axis. And again, we need to separate to get our scatter plot. Well, what happened? 0%, right? Because we got a tail. What I want to show you is that it's helpful to lock your endpoints here. So we're going to put this up to 100 and lock these. So if you click on the little gray box around your endpoints here, that will lock your scale. So you can see what's happening here. We've got a pattern where we go tail, and then we have heads, heads, heads. So now we're starting to get some more tails, and that should correspond to the table. Let's change our repeat value to 100 and run this again. And let's make these a little smaller, and let's change the color. I would rather have red here. And notice that we started out at 100% because we had a lot of what at the beginning of our experiment? We had a lot of heads, but then it started to come down because we started to get some tails. Next thing in this activity that you're going to be asked to do is put in a reference line. You can move this reference line up and down until you get where you want to eyeball it here, and notice that this is settling down at 54%, which is kind of surprising because we think it should be 50%. And this is where the law of large numbers comes in. As you increase the number of flips, you're going to approach that theoretical probability of 50%. So what happens when we change this to 500? I don't suggest putting in 1,000,000. Students will try that. I don't suggest it. Okay, now what happened? Well, now we're getting down to something that's more reasonable is in what we expect to happen. So as I slide this, yep, we expect to see it getting closer to 50%. And it is. It's settling down. I notice it had to kind of bump back up a little bit right there. So I think that's the end of what I want to have you guys do in this particular activity. There is an extension where we start to look at the distribution, but I don't think that's part of this particular activity. Let me double check before I stop. Nope, this looks good. Thanks for watching, guys.